Hey, this is Jim Sedore. I am your personal Bible teacher, and you're listening to the Bible Exposition channel. Hey, welcome back to all my friends and listeners out there. You got Jim here. Hopefully, I have you there. Now, I'm very, very excited about this because I was going over these notes last night, and there was just so many cool things in this teaching. Particularly, I can't even say particularly, but you're going to hear a little from Zechariah, you're going to hear a little from Jeremiah. Oh, I just love this stuff. So, just when I finish, or just when I start, the guy's outside in my yard trimming my bushes and things, so you might hear a little bit of engine noise in the background. But this is going to be fun. This teaching is going to have a lot of terrific information in it. Now, look, we're talking about here these mysteries that Paul was given by the Lord Jesus Christ out in this Arabian desert, right? So, I've been also telling you about how God is not through with the nation of Israel. Of course, they have been blinded. We saw that in Romans 11. We saw that they've been broken off from the roots of Abraham and been out there now, 1900 plus years in spiritual national blindness. But God hasn't lost track of them. He knows what every one of them are doing. And we've seen that in our generation. The Jew is coming back to his homeland from 1948. He's certainly not out of the woods. They've been a long way from having peace over there. But they have this reality of a king and a kingdom. That's what the Bible teaches. So they're coming back. They're coming back from every nation out there, getting ready for what I'm going to show you in verse 26 of Romans 11. Now, I've studied with you guys about the fullness of the Gentiles coming in, right? So that's the church. That's the church age people, the age of grace. Once the Lord comes down and raptures us and gets us out of the way, takes us up to glory, leaves the unbelieving Gentile world to go through the tribulation primarily is God dealing with Jews, his covenant people. Watch this, Romans 11:26. And so all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. Now, watch people. Whenever you read the Bible, you got to take every word and inspect it. And so all Israel shall be saved. Does it say some? Does it say most? No, it says all. All. So you got to remember, what part of Israel is God interested in? Believers, right? So all of the believing people in Israel will be saved. Will any unbelieving Israelites be saved? No. How do you know that? Go back to the book of Zechariah and look at chapter 13. Now, I'm sure the word all Israel in verse 26 in Romans 11 is talking about a remnant, not the total number of Israelites that'll be living on the planet at the time. So if you look at Israel today, you got, oh gosh, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 million people in Israel. There's probably about 15 million Jews worldwide. Most are in America, lots are in Russia and other parts of the world, but Zechariah tells us something that chases us all the way back to Romans 11. that all Israel shall be saved. So watch this. Turn to Zechariah 13, and we're going to drop down to verse 8. And I hope you guys are reading along with me. It shall come to pass that in all the land, that's all of Israel, saith the Lord. Now that word Lord is fully capitalized, so that's Jehovah. 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the third shall be left therein. People, who is that? It's the remnant. And I will bring the third part through the fire. Through the fire of what? Tribulation. And will refine them as silver is refined, and will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I will hear them. I will say, it is my people. And they shall say, the Lord is my God. And again, fully capitalized. Jehovah is my God. Now, hop over to Jeremiah 31. Go to Jeremiah 31, verse 31. And in that little piece of scripture, we see the new covenant. Now, the new covenant is not church ground, because there is no church ground in the Old Testament. It deals with Israel. Jeremiah 31, 31. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord. So, the Lord says it, you're not going to change it. So the day comes, saith the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Now, remember that phrase, all Israel? People, don't buy this junk that's out there that tells you that the 10 tribes of Israel are lost. You think God doesn't know where they are? God's known where every single person is on the planet and where they are now. God tells us that he's going to make a new covenant with Israel. Now watch what happens, verse 32 and 33. It says, not according to the covenant I made with their fathers in the day I took them by the hand and led them out of Egypt. So that's not the covenant of the law, which covenant they break, even though I was a husband to them, saith the Lord. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. Here it comes. After those days, saith the Lord, I will put my law in their inward parts, and write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. That's exactly, people, what Zechariah said. The day would come when 1/3 would be the surviving remnant, and they're suddenly going to realize, bam, that Jehovah is their God. They're going to recognize that Jesus of Nazareth, who they killed, was their Messiah. And believe it or not, God is once again going to call them my people. Now, he doesn't call them that today, but he will now, once the new covenant is established. Now watch verse 34. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor. Why? Because every man his brother, saying, know the Lord. That's what Moses instructed them back in Deuteronomy. Know the Lord. For they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, saith the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. Well, that's a pretty good promise, right? So that's Israel's future. But not all of them, just 1/3. The rest are going to be cut off, as you read in Zechariah, and they're going to die. Now, jump up to Matthew 24. And here again, Jesus is speaking to his 12 guys. They're on the Mount of Olives. And they ask this question. Matthew 24:3. As he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately and said, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming, and at the end of the world? So, in the first 14 verses, Jesus talks about everything that's going to happen during those 7 years of tribulation. He tells them about the famine, the war, the pestilence, the earthquakes. But in verse 15, he brings them to the midpoint of the tribulation, and watch what happens. Matthew 24:15-16. When ye therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet. That's in Daniel, by the way, chapter 9, verse 26 and 27. It says, stand in the holy place. Whosoever readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Now, I'm going to bring you back there. In order to make it stick, I want you to see this. I want you to go back to the book of Daniel for a minute and go to chapter 9. I want to see it for yourselves. Otherwise, the way I find it, usually, if I don't do it this way, it goes in one ear and right out the other. So here's Daniel. He's telling everybody that there's going to be 490 years of prophecy determined upon the nation. And here we have the first 483 in verses 25 and 26. He goes like this, and after 62 weeks, that's 62 weeks plus the other 70 weeks, which made a total of 69 weeks, for a total of 483 years. And after that, listen to this, Messiah shall be cut off. How does that happen? Crucifixion. Isn't this interesting? I mean, Daniel wrote this some 600 years before Jesus even got to the earth. Just extraordinary. There's no other book anywhere, no other holy book anywhere that's got any prophecy in it. You know why? Because if you're going to tell people what's going to happen in the future, you better darn well be right. Right? Pardon me, I got a little tickle in my throat. So now the prophecy goes on. So Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince, that's in small letters, that's the Antichrist, shall come and destroy the city and the sanctuary. So that's Jerusalem and the temple. And when did that happen? Come on, you know, 70 AD, right? Titus, the leader, the Roman general, comes in, and it's the Roman people from which this Antichrist will come. And it says, and at the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. So that's the final 7 weeks. You got 483 years fulfilled to the exact day that Jesus rides into Jerusalem on the foal of an ass on Nisan 14. That's extraordinary, people. The exact day is prophesied here in Daniel 9:26. Jesus comes riding in on the foal of the ass on Nisan 14. 483 years exactly to the day. To the day of the 490 years that were prophesied on Israel from the time of Nehemiah until the crucifixion. So 483 years means you still have 7 years left, right? 1 week. And watch what happens in verse 27. And he, who's he? The Antichrist, shall confirm the covenant with many. So he makes a treaty with Jews. And normally we feel that this treaty is going to be with the nation of Israel, but it's also going to involve a lot of the Arab worlds. Has to, right? How do you make a treaty if all sides aren't willing participants? Now, if you look over there today, a lot of stuff going on. The Middle East is a powder keg. Not just Israel. This Antichrist guy is going to come in. He's going to make a peace agreement with Israel and all her neighbors. Syria, Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Egypt, you name it. Now, 9:27 goes on, and it tells you what's going to happen. Daniel is telling you in the middle of the week, that's 3.5 years, He, Antichrist, shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. He's going to cut it out. No more Judaism. And the overspreading of abominations he shall make desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured out upon the desolate. Now, when I read a verse like that, I stop and ask myself a question. In order for Israel to practice sacrifices, what do they have to have? Well, they have to have a temple, right? So this verse tells us that before the midpoint of the tribulation takes place, Israel is going to have a temple. Now, have you got any idea what it's going to take in order for this verse to be fulfilled? The Antichrist is going to have to make an agreement somewhere with the Muslim world that's going to permit Israel somehow to erect a temple next to the Mosque of Omar. Now, I don't know how this is going to happen, but by the midpoint of that 7-year period, by that 3.5 years, there's temple worship going on. So, there's going to be the erection of a temple somewhere between the beginning of the tribulation and the middle. They're going to be operating in the 3.5 years. So then here comes Antichrist, and he's going to put a stop to it. It goes on in Daniel 9:27, for the overspreading of abominations, he, Antichrist, shall make it, the temple, desolate, even until the consummation, that's the end, and that determined, that means all the things that were foretold in the book of Revelation, the trumpet judgments, the bowl judgments, the things that are going to happen to the earth in those last 3.5 years, that's what Daniel's referring to here in 9:27. All those things are going to happen. They shall be poured out upon the desolate. So here's what Jesus is talking about now when he says in Matthew 24:15. When ye therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. Now, he's talking about the Antichrist coming into place. I think it's going to be somewhere from Western Europe. It's going to come down and stand in the Temple of Jerusalem. He's going to defile it. He's going to turn on the Jews. He's going to take away their freedom. And Revelation tells us at the same hour, in the midpoint of the tribulation, a remnant from Jerusalem, from Israel, is going to flee into the mountains from the city of Jerusalem to the area of Judea. And Jesus says to let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Wow. Now, they're going to be protected out there. The nearest mountain that I could find is to the southeast. I think it's going to be right around the city of Petra. It doesn't really matter. They're going to be fleeing the city, probably to the southeast, and then these aren't going to be the 144,000. This is going to be a cross-section of Jewish society that are fleeing from Jerusalem as soon as they get the word that the Antichrist has defiled the temple and turned on them. And they're going to be protected. Now, Matthew 24:17 says, let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Time is of the essence. This is what Matthew's writing here. Jesus is telling them, look, you got no time to take anything. Just get out. Now, you got to think about things the way they are today. If this was to happen today, well, I mean, you got a cross-section of all civilization here, right? You got old folks, you got young folks, you got babies, you got children, you got young moms and dads. All people of all ages are going to need to get out of the city. They could be wealthy, they could be poor, they could be, anything. But they've got to get out. They've got to get out quickly. They probably got a lot of expensive things in their house they're reluctant to leave behind. But Jesus is telling them, when this happens, the 3.5 years, when he defiles the temple, I don't care whether you've got things of wealth or not. You're not going to be able to use them if you're dead. Don't take anything out of your house. Matthew 24:18. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. Again, time is of the essence. In this verse here, you're talking about working class people, right? Farmers. And back in the day of Jesus, Israel was an agrarian nation. So today, the type of people he's referring to would probably be the computer operators, office workers, stockbrokers. But whoever they are, they got to just drop everything and get out of there fast. Don't even bother go and get an extra suit of clothes or a suitcase. Now in verse 19, you come to another section of Jewish society. Woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. People, young mothers, who have babies. They're still nursing. So as you can see, a complete cross-section of people, old people, young people, middle-aged people, they all have to get out. So now that the nation of Israel is back under the law, they have temple worship for the first 3.5 years. Watch what happens in Matthew 24:20. But pray ye that your flight be not in winter, because that's cold and miserable, right? Neither on the Sabbath day. That would limit how long they could walk, according to Mosaic law. So if it's on a weekday, there'd be no limitation, but they're going to have to cover a lot of miles to get down to the mountains. Verse 21. For then shall great tribulation, such as was not seen since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. Why? Well, you got to pick it up in the book of Revelation. The trumpet judgments, the bowl judgments. No one's ever seen anything like that, right? Matthew 24:22. And except those days be shortened. Now, I don't believe it's going to be made 3 years instead of 3.5. I think what the Greek word implies here is that when that 3.5 years is over, it's not going to go on an hour over. It's going to be the end right on schedule, just like Jesus said. And so if Jesus said it wouldn't be, if that period of time would go even for 24 or 48 hours, he says there should be no flesh saved. But for what? The elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Now people, whether it's back in Genesis or in the book of Revelation, all through human history, who are the elect? Anyone who believes, whether he's Jew or Gentile. They are the elect of God. Now, there's going to be a group of Jews who are the elect. And if it weren't that this thing ended right on schedule, even they wouldn't be able to survive. So who's he talking about? The escaping remnant of Jews that are fleeing from Jerusalem to the mountains. They're going to be supernaturally escorted, whether it's by archangels or Jesus Christ himself. It says so in Revelation 12. And just like Israel coming out of Egypt, it's almost a direct parallel. Even as Israel came out of Egypt and Pharaoh's army chasing behind them, who intervened on their behalf? Who was with them? God. God was with them. So same thing is going to happen here. So I don't know how he's going to do it. He can use an earthquake. He can use a storm. He can have angels intervene. There's a ton of things that can be done. It's all in his plan. Here's the timetable. You're going to have the 2 witnesses. They're going to appear. Everybody's going to see them because there's cameras all over the world, right? Could be Moses and Elijah. A lot of people think it's going to be them. And if it is, that's going to be a supernatural phenomenon. 2 men who lived over 2,000 years ago come back on the scene. Telling me that's not going to be supernatural? What about the 144,000 Jews? 12,000 from each tribe. Could you do that today? Could anybody do that today? Listen, you ask a Jew today what tribe they come from, they can't tell you. They have no idea. The Romans destroyed all the records back in 70 AD. So even if Jesus was not the Messiah, and they're still waiting for the real Messiah to come, they're not going to know if this guy's telling the truth because he doesn't know what tribe he's from. It's got to be from the tribe of Judah, right? How do you tell? But supernaturally, God knows who they are. He's going to know what tribe they're from. He's going to set them apart. He's going to send them out. It's all going to be supernatural. It's going to be crazy. So this remnant of Jews is going to survive the last 2.5 years. And they don't know how or why, but they're going to make their way down from Jerusalem to the mountains. They're going to be one large group, just like the group that came out of Egypt. And they're going to race down to the mountains in the southeast. The Antichrist is going to try and destroy them with an armed force. But God is going to intervene. Just like he opened the Red Sea to help Israel. In the time of Pharaoh, he's going to open up the earth and pour the Antichrist army into it and cover them up. Man, I can't wait to see that on CNN, how they'll report that one. Trump destroys army, buries them. What a cruel man. No, Israel's remnant is going to be safe. They're going to be safe supernaturally. God's going to feed them, much like in the wilderness with the manna. They're not going to have to worry about clothes or shelter. God is going to take care of them for 3.5 years. Then, when all of those Jews see Christ returning, there's going to be the Battle of Armageddon. He's going to pour out his wrath upon the Christ-rejecting Gentiles who've been gathering in the Middle East against this remnant of Israel. Say, go back to the last chapter of John. Remember the 8 signs in the book of John? When did I do the book of John? You remember? It was 2.5 years ago? Yeah. The 8th sign that I taught you guys about in the book of John, remember the first 7 signs took place before the resurrection. The 8th one took place after the resurrection. And this is going to be indicative of God doing something for the nation of Israel. Look at this. John 21:5. Now remember, the disciples are all in the Sea of Galilee. They recognized Christ in his resurrected body, but have not been able to digest the whole idea of him being raised from the dead. So here they are now. They're on the Sea of Galilee fishing. They've been fishing all night. And guess who's on the shore making breakfast? Yes, Jesus Christ. And in John 21:5, he says to them, "Children, have ye any meat?" He's talking to the 11 apostles. And they answered him, "No." Now, just stop here for a second and think. Think about a fisherman out there after being skunked all night. And somebody from shore says, "How many you got? How many did you catch?" And they say nothing. And watch what it says in John 21:6. Could you imagine somebody sitting on the shore and saying, "Hey, cast your net to the right side of the boat and you'll find fish"? Would you do that? But anyway, they did. They cast therefore, and now they were not able to draw the net for the multitude of fishes. Is that a miracle or what? So John 21:11 says, Peter went up, drew the net to land, full of great fishes, 153. And for all there were so many, yet was not the net broken. Well, this is getting into a little bit of, watch what happened last time they did that. The net broke, right? So this is a sign. This is a sign that when God puts out that final net, he's going to be able to take all of his remnant and not lose one. Not one. And that's the sign in John 21:11. That when God makes his final move with the nation of Israel, that 1/3 remnant is going to remain intact. He's not going to miss anybody. And they're all going to suddenly believe that he's the Messiah. Now watch this. Let's finish up in Zechariah, okay? Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication. And they, the Jews, shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son. Now, go a little further to Zechariah 13, verse 6, and this is where we'll end it. And one shall say unto him, now remember, this is Zechariah. He's writing hundreds of years also before Jesus even gets to the earth. How does he know that Jesus is going to have wounds in his hand? How does he know that he's been pierced? But anyway, Zechariah writes in 13:6, what are these wounds in thy hand? And then he answers, those with which I was wounded in the house of my friends. Wow. Oh, man. So every Jew in that remnant is going to see the pierced side, they're going to see the pierced feet and the pierced hands, and they're going to suddenly, miraculously, to the last Jew, just like the last fish in the net, they're all going to believe that Jesus is their crucified, risen Savior, Lord, and Redeemer. And just like it says in Isaiah, on that day, that's the day when Israel becomes a nation. And that's going to do it for today's teaching. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. This is Jim Sedore. I am your personal Bible teacher. You've been listening to the Bible Exposition channel. I hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. God bless. Hey, this is Jim Sedore. I am your personal Bible teacher. If you like what you hear, and you think your friends and relatives would benefit by the teaching, please share it with everyone you know. Thanks, and have a great day.